In today's episode, we're talking about what it truly means and truly takes to upgrade your life. So don't you change that dial or drop that phone. We're about to level it up and shatter the mold. Question. In a world where groupthink is the norm, others want what you've earned, and thinking for yourself will get a target painted on your back, how do you flip the script and level up your business, your money, relationships, your health, your status, and your life? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Andrew S. Kaplan, and it's time to shatter the mold. Welcome to another episode of Shatter the Mold. Andrew S. Kaplan, really excited to be here with you today. You know, I am uploading this episode one day before the 1-year anniversary of the release of the last Law of Attraction book you'll ever need to read. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you so much to everyone who has bought the book and sent in those great reviews and sent me all that feedback and really just had so much enthusiasm and support around the book. I really do appreciate it. I really am excited at the direction that this is going. And all I can say is thank you so much. You know, we are close to 1,000 user ratings and reviews on Amazon, and we're also close to 1,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. So all I can say is thank you. There's no other word for it. I'm really pumped about where the next year is going to take us, and I guess we'll see what those numbers look like in another 365 days. But that's all I got to say. For those that have not checked out the book yet, you can just go to lastlawofattractionbook.com, or if you don't want to pull out your wallet, you just want to check out the kind of content I'm doing around the book for free, you can go to youtube.com/AndrewCap. Again, a lot of great content there, a lot of great feedback from people on that YouTube channel, and a lot of fun videos and more content on the way. So I hope that you will enjoy that. I hope that you'll check it out. With that said, we are going straight into today's awesome featured interview guest. Dr. Nick Sotelo is leveraging his experience as a professional helper to show people how they can first realize and then reach their true potential. He's a life coach that works one-on-one with people to shift their perspective about who they are and what their untapped resources really are. Nick climbed all the way to the top of his career as a corrections worker and as an academic earning a PhD in counseling. His platform for helping people is Mindset, Mission, Movement. He's also the host of an awesome podcast called The Upgraded Life, which I was fortunate enough to be a guest on very recently, and we're going to dive into all of this. So without any further ado, Shatter the Mold warmly welcomes Dr. Nick Sotelo. Dr. Nick, thank you so much for being here, my friend, and welcome to Shatter the Mold.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you today, and you know we are like just on the heels of a conversation we just had where I was interviewed by you, and for me, I was telling you, you know, yesterday when we did this, I kind of like am the beneficiary of that, and that I get to see you in action through that role, serving people through your podcast, and it helps me just in terms of the style with which I approach this interview, the questions that I might ask. So thank you for, you know, unintentionally giving me that little extra leg up on this. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Glad I could help.
Yeah. So, you know, while we're on that topic, I mean, let's begin with the upgraded life. What inspired you to go down that path for this, and really what kind of keeps you in the game for that, so to speak, every single day?
Absolutely. Well, with the pursuits that I have, you know, for myself and for the goals that I have for myself financially and career wise, I know that you have to build an audience. And it's the old, you know, mantra of sales. People have to know, like, and trust you. And so I was looking for ways to build that audience. I was looking for a platform that I could reach people in a meaningful way. And you know, I'm active in social media. Don't get me wrong. I got Facebook and Instagram and a YouTube channel. But for me, the podcast platform really seemed to be something that I could put energy into and not have it feel like it was a chore. And so being able to use my voice, being able to interview people. I've done, you know, a handful of solo episodes where I get to put out there kind of my take on things. The platform really just seemed to fit me and my personality and my style and my, you know, my ultimate goal of building an audience.
Love it. Now, you know, I hear the name, The Upgraded Life, and it's pretty obvious just in there, but the interpretation I get out of it, it's about giving people the tools, the resources, and the perspectives so that they can do that. They can facilitate themselves and literally upgrade their life in a myriad of areas, whether it's their health, whether it's their finances, relationships, any piece that they think that they need to really grow for, right?
Absolutely.
Love it. Love it. And it's so funny because I word it in a different way and I go through a different approach, but we have a lot of parallels in our podcast because it really is about, I say leveling up, you say upgrading,
Mhm.
but it's all coming from the same core.
Mhm.
And, for you, the interesting thing, which I wholeheartedly agree with, is you really rely on the fact that, people need to shift their perspective about who they are. And you help them in doing that. You help them in realizing their untapped resources. I'm curious, how is the best way for people to go about changing that perspective for themselves?
Wow, there's a $1 million question.
Yeah.
um, I mean, some of it. I mean, there's lots of different ways, I guess, right? And for me, when I was going through training to become a counselor, so I was getting a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. We kind of had a heart to heart kind of lecture from one of our professors, Dr. Anna Berardi, and she basically leveled with us as a class, as a cohort, and said, "Look, when somebody's in your office and you're their counselor or you're their therapist, you are literally most of the time powerless to change their circumstance."
Mm,
Meaning that if this person's coming in and things aren't right financially, things aren't right in their marriage, things aren't right in their relationship with their children, we can't wave a wand and change any of those. So let's be clear about that. I'm hearing her, coming across the lectern talking about this, right? But so what can we do? And what we can do is help people shift their perspective. And so I remember learning that as a young man. I was probably 25, 26 years old at this phase in my life. And, there's things that I glommed onto at that phase that, I've written down, that I've passed on. And that's one of those things that we're powerless in terms of a counseling or, a coaching dynamic to literally say, "Oh, you're broke. Let me just give you, $2 million, bam, right there, and take care of it." But what we can do is help people learn to shift their perspective on things. And so I was making this transition, making this pivot, out of and away from the mental health world and into the coaching world. And that's a big part of what my podcast is, kind of looping in both of those worlds and into my message. And I was, and you might appreciate this because I know your background as a copywriter, but I was struggling with my messaging and what am I communicating and who am I reaching? So I hired a coach for that.
mm,
And what his approach was is he's like, "Give me like four of your customers, give me four people that you've coached, and I'll talk to them. And I'm going to talk to them, not knowing what you did or how you did it, or what the intended impact was, but I'm just going to listen to what your customers have said about what you did for them." And through that process, he fed back to me, you know what all of them said is that you help them to shift their perspective on their current circumstance. Right?
mm.
So I was like, I wonder why that is. And again, kind of that flashback to my professor in that one lecture came right back and centered up on me. So a big part of it is that's what I learned to do as a counselor. Is I learned to help people take a step back, you know, take a step back out of their pain, out of their misery, out of their discomfort, mentally, physically, emotionally. Look at things for what they are, and not try, but learn to see what the opportunity is there, or what is it what's the hard lesson that life is trying to teach you here, rather than wallow in it, rather than make excuses for it, rather than be a victim to it. Right? We're
Yeah.
not always responsible for what happens to us, uh, but we are responsible to overcome whatever situation is sitting in front of us.
Yes. Yeah. Some this guy, Vic Johnson, who I learned from maybe 14 years ago, he used to have this saying, like, it may not be your fault, but it's still your responsibility.
Absolutely, yes.
The second you shy away from that, you shy away from any agency or power to make a change for yourself. And I love your perspective, by the way, Nick, because, we're talking about something where when people kind of have a problem and they're viewing it in a certain point, a lot of times they're unconsciously not just viewing it the way it is, but they're viewing it in the sense that they don't think it could be changed. So it
Right.
sounds to me like what you do through the shift in perspective, or, a word I'm sure you're familiar with that I like to use is reframe. You reframe what basically the problem is to begin with. you're suddenly giving them a new way of solving it because they're not stuck in that fixed point of view that was holding them back to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. We definitely learn reframe in the counseling world as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another cool thing because like reframe works in counseling, it works in friendship, it works in business, it works in copywriting because it all comes down to human psychology, right? This is all about the way people view the world around them when we're talking about the limits that they put in front of themselves, when they talk about the confidence they have to change things or not change things. Um, I'm wondering, when you help people through this, are there any specific areas that seem like they are the toughest nut to crack, so to speak? Are there certain things where people just struggle a lot more than other areas?
Yeah, absolutely. And so my home base in terms of counseling theory is called intersubjective systems theory, IST. Robert Stallworld, George Atwood, Donna Orange are the primary pioneers of it, the most prolific writers in it. And we talk about organizing principles. And so organizing principles, belief systems, it's very similar. Um, that's how we, through the help of others and our experiences, those are the conclusions that we have arrived upon in terms of who we are, who other people are, and what the world around us is all about. And
Mm-hmm.
so, as those organizing principles develop through when we're children, and the messages that we receive, and our experiences with our own parents and siblings, and schools and churches and communities, reinforces those conclusions. And after decades, 5, 10, 20, 30 years, if we haven't brought into our lives other experiences, other mindsets, other ways of looking at it, then we can be pretty set and settled that this is the way that life is, this is the way the world is. And that can be difficult to shift because you, like I say, if you got 20, 30 years of thinking this way and believing this way about whatever the circumstance is. So I think when you're trying to help somebody look at something differently based on decades of looking at it only one way, that can be difficult in terms of getting people to shift their perspective.
I imagine they've basically linked these criteria, this new reality, they've linked it to their identity, and
Yeah,
to look at it in a different way. In many ways, it's threatening their basis for existence in a way that they're not even really ready to face.
absolutely.
Wow. So, I mean, I imagine you see all sorts of people, and you work with them at all sorts of levels because I imagine some people, you can break up the I'm using my own term, the scar tissue, so to speak, a lot easier than other people that might just, might be so stuck down that rabbit hole,
Mhm.
so fixated on whatever the problem might be, so addicted to their struggle that I imagine that it gets a little harder to pull certain people out of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it can be, and it's kind of weird that we're talking so much about counseling theory, but this is kind of stages of change. It's pretty popular in the addictions world, where people are pre-contemplative about the circumstance that's in front of them, right? Pre-contemplative means that either they don't recognize it as a problem, or even if they kind of recognize it as a problem, they totally uh, have no ethical imagination about it changing in any shape or manner.
I love it. Okay. So, assuming people are even willing to look at a problem in a different way and accept the possibility that there's something else,
Mhm.
is there any method, whether you're doing it for them as a counselor or something they could even do for themselves,
Yeah.
that's basically high impact that can help them snap themselves out of that fixed point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I really like, because it was what was done with me. I really like the wheel of life exercise. It's my baseline entry activity that I do with anybody that I'm working with. That's more of a coaching dynamic, and it really kind of. I mean, nobody owns this. It's one of those things that's been around for a long time. I think it's very analogous to Hal Elrod and his level 10 life metaphor that he uses, but it's if somebody's at the point to where they're at least willing to ask for help or look for an answer, right, then that tells you that there is something there that's telling them that it's possible. They may not believe it's possible for themselves, but at least they're willing to ask the question. At least they're willing to poke around it a little bit to see what the response might be. So I like the wheel of life exercise. You basically look at the major domains that are usually active in anybody's life. It's finances, it's relationships, it's career, it's If you're a parent, it's, you know, how you're getting along with your parents. It's your health, your physical health. I mean, how you're getting along with your children. And I have people scale those domains, you know, 0 to 10, current state, right? And so in the next question, so they go through all of those and say, you know, say finances, I'm a 4, and, you know, the relationship I have with my partner, maybe I'm a 6, and, you know, what I'm in my career, I'm like a 2. And then I'll ask the question, you know, so if you look at all those things, you know, how would you rate your overall life, you know, 0 to 10? And then my next question is, pick 2 of those domains. If you pick 2 out of the um, domains that we looked at, and if you really hammered those, you really kind of ratcheted them up, leveled them up, upgraded them as close to 10 as possible, pick which 2 that, if you could do that, would really kind of make the overall difference in your life.
Mm,
So I kind of, again, that's me setting the stage for their perspective on it, right?
yeah.
And it's them saying, I don't know how I would do this, but if this part of my life was an 8, 9, or 10, it would provide so much relief for, you know, my current, you know, circumstance. And so that's kind of how I like to set the stage for what is it that you really want, what is it that we're really after, and how capable do you think you are at achieving that?
Right. I love your use of questions, and I hear you say that. And again, I'm my own weird mad scientist, and I analyze the human condition. I analyze psychology, and it sounds to me like through those questions, you're basically forcing people in answering them to admit the possibilities themselves, that the improvement can actually be there.
Right.
And all of a sudden, there's like this northern guiding star
Yeah.
that they're going to work towards. It doesn't feel as impossible as it did 2 seconds before you actually put through the process.
Yeah, I think even just presenting the scale, right? And sometimes it's called a decision ruler. Like if you say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you know, 0 is your total wreck or in total misery, and 10 is, you know, you're an expert. I mean, you're actually helping other people exceed in this area of life. Even setting that stage up, 0 to 10, if somebody puts themselves at a 5 or 6, it's communicating to them that a 10 is possible.
I love it. I love it. This is cool. I'm glad we're kind of going down this rabbit hole, and because I'm very intrigued by this. And whenever I have a guest of your caliber on, of like, I'm definitely going to go down this path. But one thing I made also a mental note to cover. I know in my conversations with you that you are also a proponent of affirmations,
Mhm.
and I wanted to use this opportunity to get your perspective on, not just the formation, I guess, the choice of how to pick affirmations that are empowering and useful, but I was curious about your opinion on the best and most efficient way of applying them to someone's life.
Sure. And you know, I teach people what worked for me, right? And obviously I'm always adding to what works for clients as well. So yeah, I believe in affirmations. So um, my entry point for working with people is about mindset. So, you know, my platform is mindset, mission, and movement. So mindset for me has 3 parts. It's core values, it's affirmations, and it's inner vision. Those are the 3 components for me and how I work with people that constitute having an upgraded mindset.
Hmm.
And so affirmations then are the antidote to what we call, in kind of the bigger self-help area, personal development, limiting beliefs. You know, whatever we call that, the itty bitty shitty committee, limiting beliefs. For me, affirmations is the antidote to those things, right? And so people say, well, I don't believe all that affirmation stuff. And I'll say, yeah, you do, because you already use them. They're like, no, no, I don't. I said, yeah, you do. They're already active in your mind. Think about the time that you made the last mistake that you made, whether, you know, you got a speeding ticket, or whether you stubbed your toe, or whether you spilled, you know, coffee or milk over something. You told yourself a set of things in response to that. Oh my God, I'm so stupid. You know, I'm always clumsy. I'm never fast enough. You know, I just knew that I was going to get a ticket. I'm so dumb for doing that. Well, there's your affirmations. There's your own self-reinforcing limiting beliefs that are active in your life, whether you know it or not, right? And
Mm.
so I want to look at those things, and that's part of what I do. Is, you know, when you have a non-effective exchange with your partner, what do you tell yourself? Well, I know that person is never going to change. I'm never going to be able to communicate well with that person, right? So those are negative affirmations. That's part of the negative default mindset that without intentionality, we let rule our minds, and then it impacts the outcomes that we have in our life. So for me, affirmations are the antidote to limiting beliefs, the antidote to the itty bitty shitty committee, and learning how to craft affirmations based on that wheel of life again, right? So I'm going back to that wheel of life, and I'm looking at those areas. Okay, I'm going to try to level up in this area. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I've always been a failure, right? So an affirmation, let's go finances, right? I'm putting in the work daily that was going to build the skill to make me financially successful. Okay, that might be an affirmation that could be crafted. It's pretty generic, obviously. It would be pretty individualized, but based on the person's specific financial situation. So we'll get these set of affirmations developed, right? And the way that I like to use them is I like to incorporate them into a morning routine. So if you're working with me, I'm going to say you need to carve out 20 minutes in the morning to start your day off right. And if that means getting up 20 minutes early, then that's what we need to do. If you're already in the habit of getting up, an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours before you have to hit the door to start your day, perfect. Well, then we just need to carve out or shape, 20 of those minutes a little bit different than what you currently are. So, and again, I'm taking this from Hal Elrod and Miracle Morning. So I'm a SAVERS guy. So I adapted the SAVERS acronym. So silence, affirmations, vision work. That's going to be what I'll ask people to bite off initially. So spending time in silence, meditation, deep breathing, however you want to do that. If you're, a faith-based person reading some scripture, that's fine there too. And then next is affirmations. And then the next is vision work. And so for me, the affirmations fold right into the inner vision work. So I'm pretty faithful at this. I do this when I'm on vacation. I do it's scheduled into my calendar, 7 days a week. Takes me about 45 minutes to get through my process. But when I'm getting people just used to it at first, I say, you got to carve out 20 minutes. And so affirmations are going to be linked to those areas of your life that you're trying to upgrade or level up. And they're all about, and there's some different camps on affirmation. A lot of people feel like they're lying to themselves when they do affirmation work, right? And this is where I learned a lot from Jack Canfield to kind of craft these affirmations in a way that are truthful, but yet also steering your unconscious to that future end state that you're after and you're trying to desire. So people get concerned about affirmations, again, finances, that say, I'm a millionaire with $10 million in the bank, right? Well, that might be an affirmation, but if you're broke and you're saying to yourself every day, I'm a millionaire with $10 million in the bank, part of you's like, no, I'm not. You're just lying to yourself. Other skeptical people hear that and say, you're not a millionaire. You don't have 10. You're just lying to yourself. Well, and I can get it too, right? I understand the thought around that, but I teach people and myself to say, I'm learning the discipline that it takes to be blessed with $10 million or more, because it's going to serve my mission and the mission that I have for others, right? That might be an example of an affirmation that's true, right? If you don't have $10 million in the bank, okay, but you are learning the skill and the discipline and the mindset that it takes to be blessed with $10 million. So I'll shut up there. I've been talking for a little bit.
No, that's good. My brain's, it's so funny. I'm making mental notes in my head as you speak. And you even made one of my points for me, because I noticed in that example you gave a couple minutes ago that you chose an affirmation worded in a way as if it's in a process. It's like it sounds to me like you're being very intelligent and very strategic in the use and the counseling of these affirmations, where you're giving people just enough wiggle room where you're right, they don't feel like they're lying to themselves. They can be in a process, but the process is in and of itself an invitation to the better reality. Yes. Like, I imagine people, one affirmation for, it's like, I know I'm worthy of $1 million. And the cool thing about that's like, you could have $1 million right now and be worthy, or it could be on the way and you're worthy, and you're leaving yourself that wiggle room.
Yep. I love that. Thanks for that too. And there's a delicate balance too, because I also understand and agree and buy into the affirmations shouldn't be goals either.
Right.
Meaning like an affirmation, the way that I use it and the way that I believe in, need to not be goals like, By 2020 or 2021, February 15th, 2021, I'll have my first $1 million. And your unconscious isn't really hooked to that, right?
Yeah.
That's up here. So
It's funny. I agree with you, and for a slightly different reason, although you maybe have the same reason. I think that the date puts an unnecessary pressure and an unnecessary requirement.
right.
And, like for me, it's like if I'm saying I'm going to make $1 million by February 15th, maybe if I didn't have that deadline, I'd have 10 million by April.
Right.
But
Right.
it's like I'm forcing the situation in a way that's not required.
Yeah.
And by the way, just because we're on this topic of affirmations, one thing I noticed, and I know I'm putting words in your mouth right now, but one thing I thought was really fascinating just by where you're describing it and what I got out of it is when people are in those moments of challenge where they're in the fight with their spouse or something's going wrong and like, oh, this always happens, or oh, I hate this about myself or whatever. Those sound to me like opportune moments where they're not necessarily going to flip what they said to themselves and make that the affirmation, but it's a clue. They have a clue there of where they can tweak something that's going to address that in a healthy, more positive minded way.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
love it.
And we talked a lot about gratitude in our discussion too. So again, it may just be, using an affirmation that's really about expressing gratitude for that person in your life.
Yes. Yes. It's funny. Like I was even thinking that it's like, if I was in a fight with a girlfriend or wife, like she never understands me. She's always arguing. I can change it to like, I'm so grateful for how passionate she is
Mhm.
about communicating and making sure I understand her. Now that, the first couple times you might have to grit your teeth through that. So maybe change it a little, make it a little softer. But for other people, maybe that's like the magic sauce right there. And that's really enough to get them over the top.
Yeah. And then, another point about affirmations is again, like all of this stuff, it's not an overnight, it's not a quick fix. Right. And
Mm,
remember, 10, 20, 30 years of the current type of affirmations that you've been using, and that's given you everything that you have, that you're responsible for right now. Right. Uh, it takes time. It's a discipline. It's not going to happen overnight. And a lot of people will try it for, a handful of days and whatnot, and then they'll abandon it and say, well, that doesn't work. I'm giving up on this stuff. Well,
yeah. Yeah.
you have to, and
And
this is why working with a coach is important too, right? Because you can have that person in your life to say, whoa, 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 right? Like, here's the reason why. If there's something that isn't working for you, let's figure it out. Like if you feel like you're lying to yourself, okay, let's figure that out. But let's not abandon, this process that I know has worked for me. It's worked for the clients that I've worked with, and again, we talked about on our show. You're going to find people that have reached stardom in whatever field or discipline it is, and I guarantee you they're going to have some sort of method of affirmations that are going to be active in their life.
yeah, I love the perspective you have there because it's obvious to me, of course, no surprise. You understand how important it is that people are engaged in the process. I mean, even like me, we were talking in our conversation, like the whole point of my book is giving methods that are fun and enjoyable
Right.
because I know people, if they don't have the luxury of a coach, they're going to grit their teeth and eventually they're going to quit on it. So whether it's something that's fun or whether you have a coach guiding you, or maybe you're lucky and you've got both going on, it's all about that magic formula and that magic combination that's going to keep you in whatever process you're doing, whether it's gratitude or affirmations or any kind of process that's really going to invite a better version of your life for yourself. And, to speak to your podcast, to upgrade your life literally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's another piece of why the podcast also fits with what I do, is because it's out there now forevermore, right? I've done an episode on affirmations. And so for people that are looking, they're searching, affirmations, they may run across it. Right. And so even though maybe they're not working with me directly as a formal arrangement as a paid coach, I'm still leaving, the knowledge out there for people to tap into, and it may be all that they need. So that's
Mm.
another reason why I like the podcast format.
I love it. I love it. Now, obviously, I take pride in the fact that I know that my listeners, as I'm sure your listeners are as well, are really open-minded. But I do imagine that you might encounter certain clients where, they're a little bit of a tough nut to crack. I'm wondering if, in the counseling that you give them, do you ever have any kind of like weird, hooky, airy fairy stuff that like turns them off, yet is so powerful if you can get them to actually try it out?
I think for me, that's the vision work,
Mm,
right? And so, getting people to calm themselves and do the inner vision work. This is kind of what's bridging the affirmations can live up in the cerebral, up in your head, but that vision work is really what kind of brings it down into your heart and into your soul. And I
Mm.
think that is where a lot of people, they don't have a lot of familiarity with that, and that's where it can seem like a little bit out there, a little bit woo woo. And so I think, and again, that's why for me it's wheel of life, core values, affirmations, and then vision work. The stage is all set, but that's kind of the sequence that I work people through,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that for a lot of folks, it's the vision work that they aren't like, what are you talking about? And I know that you and I talked quite a bit about vision work in our conversation that we had yesterday, but
Yeah,
it's that
that's
idea is that your mind and your subconscious, it can't tell the difference between what actually happens in reality versus what you picture in your mind, right? So there's the, and we have the proof and the evidence to show that, but just and again, people already do this, right? When people say, what's your worst nightmare, and they tell you, and it's something that really hasn't happened yet in reality, but yet they're terrified by it.
yeah.
Right.
And that opens a whole Pandora's box on self-fulfilling prophecies and ways
Yes.
that people can
Yep.
get the like, oh, I know she's going to break up with me. It's like, well, you're driving yourself crazy and you're nagging her into doing it, so of course it's going to happen.
Mhm.
Yeah. So jumping around a little bit, and again, taking advantage of the fact that I know that you are an expert in certain things and just squeezing a little extra juice out of this orange here.
Yep.
I know that you draw a distinction between mental health and mental wellness. And I guess I want to open the floor for you to I guess, describe it in your way for my audience, and in hopes that we'll all learn something here.
Yeah, and just to be clear, you said mental health and mental wellness.
Yeah. Did I misphrase that?
No, I just didn't. I had something else going on, and I didn't necessarily
Oh,
hear that. I wanted to make sure.
gotcha. Yep.
There's
Mental
other,
health versus mental wellness.
yeah, and well, and it's not just my distinction too. Again, within the field of psychology, there was a whole subset of psychologists and psychiatrists through the humanistic phase that really, that's the reason why they broke off from traditional psychoanalysis, was because it was so model oriented, like reified model oriented, and so um, symptom based, and they didn't find it very helpful. So Abraham Maslow, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, he was one of them. Carl Rogers is the sixth most quoted person of all times, right? He is developed person-centered therapy. Heinz Kohut, Mike Camp, Stollerow, they all broke away because they were tired of the and William Glasser and reality therapy, right? And so um, I have been, those were my people, I guess, when I was coming through and learning, and so they made the distinction, like in the 50s and 60s, and really kind of set the stage for the, and pushing through in the 70s and 80s for some of them. Um, but the difference is, um, it's what you focus on grows, right? That's really the distinction. And so the more that you're focusing on diagnostic labels and symptoms, symptomology, pathology, and that's what makes up the bulk of what you are discussing with people, or and what people are coming away from your discussions, well, that's all you've paid attention to, so that's what's going to grow, that's what's going to be the focus, versus focusing on aspects of health, right? Aspects of wellness that you could be improving upon, right? Diet, sleep, and exercise. Um, in my world, positive affirmations, upgraded affirmations. Um, the more that we focus on those things that make people well, then those are the outcomes that we're going to have. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's really what I see. And the insidious trap there is psychology and mental health and counseling so desperately want to be accepted by the medical profession. And so we do all kinds of things in that world to get this approval from medicine and from quote unquote science, that we have turned things that are not real into reified diagnoses.
Mm.
Meaning, um, a great example that I used to use, but I had a friend of mine show me even better. So for folks that aren't seeing the video of this, I got a little battery that's sitting on my desk, right? So I'm going to put this in my hand. So if this is depression, right? And if Andrew, if you and I were in the same room, could I give it to you? Could I give you depression?
Um, well, no, not depression itself. I mean, you can hand me the battery,
Right,
if that's what you meant. Yeah.
right. But we reify what depression is. And we think this is a medical diagnosis. It exists
Mm,
physically somewhere in your body, in your brain, in your mind, and you have it. Like, I have depression. Okay, well, if you have it, can you give it to somebody else?
right.
Well, no. No. Well, who gave it to you? Right. And it also assumes that it's easy to just let go of it, right? Just let go of your depression. Right. And so that's what I mean by like reify that we've done these things to ourselves in order to be accepted by the medical community
Right.
around in legitimizing the work that we do with people, where depression by all rights is a cluster of symptoms that a group of experts um, kind of agreed upon, that when you have so many of these symptoms, we call that depression,
Yeah.
right? But depression doesn't live as a organic imbalance in your mind or in your brain as much as we want to think it does, but it doesn't. It has never been proven to be that way, and that's pretty much the case with most mental health diagnoses. So
Mm,
anxiety, bipolar, whatever you want to call it. Now there's some, I will say, schizophrenia, extreme bipolar. Yeah, there's probably some organic stuff going on, but by and large, it really isn't. So mental illness, mental health versus mental wellness. One is focused on reducing symptoms so that you can return to life as you knew it as normal. And mental wellness is increasing your ability to appreciate life for what it is
mhm.
versus life that you used to know it to be.
Yeah. And I'm no doctor, but I imagine that the focus and emphasis on mental wellness will actually autocorrect some of the mental health issues that people
Absolutely.
might never even
Yep.
encounter. They might not never get it because they were focusing on wellness instead.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The problem is you can't bill for mental wellness.
Right.
No, you can't. I mean, you literally can't. You cannot
Yeah.
go see, if you were seeing me as as a mental health client, I could not bill for mental wellness. I can bill for mental illness,
Yeah.
and I may actually put a label on. I wouldn't. I don't. But people all the time put a label on you that fits diagnostic criteria, just to appease the insurance panels. So you
Yeah.
cannot bill for mental wellness. You just can't.
The license that you're practicing under forbids any other, like it goes, it sticks to certain specific things,
Right.
and that's it. You've got to stay within the confines of that if you want to prescribe something for somebody or treat them in a certain way.
Yep. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Cool. So couple quick, I know we're close to wrapping up, a couple quick maybe rapid fire questions. I was curious because I know obviously you have to keep a level of confidentiality here, so I'm not sure if this is a question that can't really be answered, but I'm wondering if there's ever like a certain result or certain outcome that you help someone find their way to that just blew you away, that you're just so proud of, that still kind of like lives with you every single day, that you're so glad you were able to do that for a certain person.
Yeah, I can share with one. And after 20 years of being in the game, you can learn to describe things and not give away the identifying details. So
Yeah.
um so vision work may just depends. I may have people actually create a vision board, and I'm sure you're familiar with those. Especially the more kind of visual, gotta touch it, feel it type of folks. A vision board may be the way to go as far as that goes. And so I remember having a client go through this process of a vision board, and then I heard them say, well, I had some friends come over and we did it together, which I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I just don't know how conducive that's going to be for your own personal vision, right? But I kind of let it go because at least they were in motion and doing the work, however they see fit. And then as it got to the point of asking how it was going, like, was this person spending time looking at this vision board and spending time developing a relationship with this vision board, the answer was kind of like, no, I'm really not.
Mm,
And long story short, what after several months of kind of tiptoeing around this, what eventually came out was this person was scared to death to dream and to have uh, positive expectations for the future based on previous life experiences where dreams were crushed,
Hmm.
and dreams were ripped away, and dreams were systematically destroyed by some people and some circumstances in this person's life. And it was powerful for them to realize um, why they were petrified from the prospect of dreaming.
Right.
And so when you say, is there something that you've done that you're just super proud of? Yeah, I help somebody restore their personal capacity to dream for themselves and for their future. You know what I mean?
That's
And
amazing.
yeah,
You help them find their way to self-awareness that they then leveraged for an actual improvement in their life that they never would have thought possible before that.
absolutely. Yeah, they
I
had
love
totally
it.
given up on it, and they didn't quite have their finger on it until I was pushing them, like, "Hey, create this vision board and spend some time looking at it. And this is all about your future." And
Yeah. Well, it's like, when you said that they did it with someone else, like my brain went to all these different assumptions that were definitely like running away from doing it, whether
right,
it's just being a people pleaser, not wanting to offend the other person, or being scared to dream or anything else. So, yeah, I think it's always a clear telltale sign when people can't engage in process for themselves that there's some lack of awareness right there. So, while we're on this topic, because again, I imagine that you take these tools to whatever measure you can, and you upgrade your own life and you move forward every single day. Is there anything about your life that you'd want to share with people that has been a tremendous upgrade that others can learn from, that you to this day just have so much gratitude for and you continue to enjoy?
wow. um, I think, you know, kind of my subtitle for this is helping people realize and reach their potential, and
Mm,
that's about the perspective shifting that we talked about at the beginning of our conversation. But early in my career, a good halfway through my career, I was just in my career as in youth corrections. So that's where I've been working for 21 years in youth corrections, and went to school along the way and whatnot. But just seeing wasted potential, meaning we would get these kids at state level corrections. It was the end of the road. This is what everybody was saying. You don't want to go to this place, you don't want to go to this place. So here they were, and I would see kids that were gifted artists, and I would see kids that were gifted athletes, and I would see kids that were great with their spoken word, and writers, and just all kinds of talent that wasn't realized. And if the talent wasn't realized, then of course it can't be reached. And so I knew that I wanted to do something about that. And kind of moving through other areas of my life, I had my own kids, and I got involved with being, a youth sports coach, kind of seeing that same dynamic. Here I am able to invest in kids in a way to help them realize their potential, not just as an athlete, but as a person as well. So that way they can reach their potential as well. And, at some point in time, I had to step back and look in the mirror, and also my wife does really good at this too, of holding myself accountable. The
mm,
things that I was doing in my life in terms of my career, and strategies that I was not I knew about but wasn't executing in my own life, was really kind of the impetus too, that I need to be holding myself accountable to make sure that I'm reaching my own potential in a variety of ways. So that was part of why I went back to earn a PhD. It's part of why I started this podcast. It's why I pivoted out of being in the mental health world and into the coaching world. Those are all things. And a big challenge that I took on for myself that has taken me places that I never thought it would was one finally addressing my dissatisfaction with my personal health, and just the way that I looked in appearance wise, being overweight and kind of hitting 40 years old, and avoiding going to get checkups and physicals because I don't want the doctor to tell me you got to lose 30 pounds and quit doing all this stuff, and
mm,
really kind of avoiding it, and kind of leaning on the glory days of my 20 years ago now, my athletic abilities. Oh, I used to be able to do this and yada, yada, yada. And long story short, when I really branded myself as a coach and really put that flag in the sand and said, I'm a coach from here on out, one of the things that I said is I'm going to address this physical fitness issue that I haven't been able to do for, the last 15, 20 years. Hired a coach, and with the idea that if I'm going to be expecting my clients to take risks, to put in the work, then I need to be doing the same in an area in my life that's important to me. And
Mm,
so that's been more recent. That I've been working with a coach since about the beginning of COVID, so February, and discovered a lot of things about myself, and about my own mindset, and about um, what I really believed would make the difference in my life. And having to avail myself to a coach and be humble and submit myself to the expertise of somebody else has been incredible for me in a lot of different ways.
I love that. Obviously, before engaging that process, you're already bringing wisdom and insight to the process, but nothing can take the place of saying, hey, if I want these people to be coachable, I'm going to go through that process myself, make sure I'm coachable, which will also give me the immediate feedback of where I'm struggling because now I'm in their shoes all the more easier.
Yeah,
I love it.
absolutely.
I love it. Cool. So if people want to learn more about you or connect with you, where are the best place or places that they can go?
Yeah, I would tell you to check out my podcast, obviously The Upgraded Life, and it's on most of the major platforms, if not all the major platforms. So Apple Podcasts, you can find me on Anchors, find me on Spotify, and a lot of the other ones, Stitcher, Overcast, wherever you're used to finding podcasts, you're going to find me on there. That's definitely a good resource for you. I cover a lot of different ground. Again, what I tell people is I interview awesome people that have done awesome things in their life, and I'm going to get them to talk about how mindset was part of their process, so that way my listeners can get some practical ways that they can, as soon as they're done with the episode, they can apply something that will upgrade their life and most likely their mindset. So I would check out my podcast. You can go to my website. It's www.nicksotelo.com/podcast, or you can go to theupgradedlifepodcast.com. Both links will take you to my podcast website. You can see the show notes and all that stuff. But I'm on Facebook, Nick Sotelo. You can find me there. Look for the purple branding. And I'm on Instagram at _upgraded life.
Cool. I'll put all those links in the show description, the show notes for this, so people can click on them
Yep.
very conveniently and easily. Last question for you, and I often ask this of my guests in some way, shape, or form, but if you can go back, 15, 20, even 25 years in the past, whatever works, and give an earlier version of yourself any one key piece of advice to make navigating the years ahead way more fulfilling, way easier, more successful, whatever you want, what is that piece of advice that you would give?
For me, it would have been financially. And so 20 years ago would have put me at the beginning of my career. I was 21, 22, and I was very much enamored with the idea of how to build multiple streams of income
Mm-hmm.
for a variety of ways. But I was working for the state, and I let the state and the comfort and the quote unquote security of a government job kind of lull me to sleep.
Mm,
And so I had started several things back then and gave up on them, thinking that I can pick it up later, and 20 years goes by and I didn't do it. And so I would take my 21-year-old self and I would say, Nick, keep pushing forward with that business. That's definitely, and then all the things that I'm too young, I'm not smart enough, all those limiting beliefs that were active then is what kind of stalled me out. And so I would tell myself, it, and I'm going to talk to people I was in shift work, meaning I was working 2 to 10s and 4 to midnight. So if anybody is out there that's listening, that's in shift work, you have a tremendous opportunity, because you have a good swath of what's called the business hours that you could be and should be building something in, right?
yes.
Sacrifice early, build that business, do all that hard work that you need to do, right? And then reap the benefits for the rest of your life.
Yes. And do it in a sustainable way. If you can do 6 hours, cool. If you could do
Yep.
4 hours, cool. Whatever you can do on a consistent daily basis where you're fully engaged,
Yep.
do it.
Yeah. And I show people how they can do that in literally whatever time that they tell me. They say, I've only got 5 minutes. Perfect. Let me show you how to build an income stream with just 5 minutes a day.
Wow.
If you can guarantee to give me 5 minutes a day, it's gonna have a longer timeline, versus if you could do an hour, 3 hours, 6 hours a day. Don't get me wrong. It's not get rich quick. But if you're serious about, you've only got 5 minutes, I'll take your 5 minutes and I'll show you how to build an income stream with 5 minutes a day.
I love that. You might get some people contacting you on Facebook on that one.
Absolutely.
But Dr. Nick Sotelo, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for giving, what I believe is a really intriguing, really insightful conversation.
Yep.
And thanks for sharing your wisdom and your experience from your years of doing this. It's highly valuable, and I fully believe people can listen back to this interview and leverage a lot of the gold that you kind of shared here. So thanks for taking the time to be here today, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Andrew. And if I can, one more thing. If you go to my website, you're going to see a red button on there, and you click it, and I'll give you free 30 minutes. And I call that a strategy session. So
Nice.
If you liked, my approach and what I said, I'll give you free 30 minutes of my time. And at the very least, I will point you in a direction to help you upgrade your life, even if it doesn't end up me working with you formally.
Guys, I don't want to murder Nick's schedule, but again, I've had a separate conversation with him on camera, so to speak, and off camera, and this guy is the real deal, and that's a very generous offer. So anyone that's kind of like feeling nudged to take him up on that, I highly recommend that you do it.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. That was awesome. Thanks for adding that to giving that to my audience. Thank you again, Dr. Nick Sotelo, for that awesome interview. I really do appreciate it, my friend. Guys, I highly recommend you check out nicksotelo.com to see more about what he's got going on. I'm going to be leaving that URL in the description of the audio episode, and of course the YouTube video description if you're checking this out on video, so you definitely want to check that out. And of course, a final reminder, if you haven't checked out my new YouTube channel around my book, it's youtube.com/AndrewCap, or if you want to check out the book, which just turned 1 year old, you can go to lastlawofattractionbook.com. And while I'm giving calls to action here, I want to remind you, if you haven't done so already, pull out that phone, hit that subscribe button, leave a quick, honest written review, and of course, stay tuned. We've got way more awesome guests and way more awesome content coming up very, very soon. And with that said, in the meantime, have a great day, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you for listening to Shatter the Mold at www.shatterthemoldpodcast.com. My name is Andrew S. Kaplan. My name is Andrew S. Kaplan, and it's time to shatter the mold.